Well, it turns out the real reason that big tech has been censoring dissenting opinions, any dissenting opinion that has been against the Democratic establishment, be it conservative voices, pro-Trump voices, or even progressive voices, the real reason they have been censoring all of these dissenting opinions is because top-level Democrats have been helping big tech gain Pentagon contracts worth billions of dollars. Top-level Democrats who have now been named to Biden's cabinet. It is all now making sense. It always comes down to follow the money. We're going to break this down. That is coming up. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching the show. Let's go ahead and break this down. So we've all known that big tech has been censoring anyone who's not in line with the Democratic establishment. So conservative voices, progressive voices, this has been going on for quite some time. I can even show you evidence that in the early days of my channel, when I started it almost 2 years ago, whenever I would do a video that was somewhat negative about Nancy Pelosi of all people, I would be demonetized. It was the most head-scratching thing to me. Why would content that just says the truth about Nancy Pelosi, but that is critical of her, would be demonetized? Well, we've all known that this pattern has existed for a while now, and many of us have been trying to figure out why big tech has been leaning so heavily into Democrats and away from conservatives. And some people say, well, maybe it was for morality reasons because, you know, the public is pressuring big tech and saying you have to do something to stop the spread of misinformation. And what started as Russiagate, right? It was, oh, the Russians, they're spreading misinformation on our platforms and you, big tech, need to do something about it. It started with that, and we've seen it morph into a campaign to stop information that is being spread by Americans, not by Russians, but by Americans. This pressure that has been coming from Democrats in Congress, from those who are the least progressive, you know, like Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein, to those who are the most progressive, like AOC and Rashida Tlaib, who've been calling for increasing censorship by big tech. They want the censorship. This has been something that's been very alarming to many of us, and something that many people have been bringing attention to. It is a scary trend. We have to have information. That is our number one weapon against tyranny. It is information. We cannot allow for the censorship of information to continue. But unfortunately, I think the writing is on the wall that it's going to get way worse. It's going to get way worse, and I don't know exactly what we're going to be able to do about it. So here's how we break this all down. We've been wanting to know why big tech has been doing this. Like I said, some people have been saying, well, for moral reasons, they want to stop the spread of misinformation and fake news, and they're doing what's right. And that's what many people are saying. Many of our friends and family and just average people are saying, well, it's the right thing to do to censor that misinformation. I even thought that maybe the reason why they were censoring was because they would go to Congress, Congress would pressure them, Congress would threaten the repeal of Section 230, which gives them immunity to, you know, the various different things that people post, you know, making them not responsible for the wacky things that, you know, Uncle Bob posts. So they've threatened that they're going to repeal that section. Democrats threaten it and say, we're going to get rid of this Section 230 if you don't censor more. And Republicans say, we're going to repeal Section 230 because you don't deserve it. You guys are censoring. You're acting as publishers. You're not acting as just platforms. But it turns out, now that Biden has begun naming his cabinet picks, it's become really, really clear what actually is happening here. Follow the money. The real reason is that big-time Democrats who are now being named to these cabinet level positions helped these big tech companies secure Pentagon contracts worth billions of dollars. Billions upon billions of dollars. These top-level Democrats were able to help these big tech companies secure. Now, they were able to help them secure those contracts under the Trump administration. Imagine what they can help these big tech companies do now that they are the administration. That is what's increasingly scary. So what was once Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon, I think now we need to all have a mental shift. It is now Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. Those are the new military industrial complex companies. And that's actually kind of following suit, to be honest with you. Many of those traditional companies like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing, many of them were Silicon Valley companies. They were the largest employers in Silicon Valley in the 60s and 70s. And now we're seeing that, no, it's not them so much. It's now the Googles, the Amazons, the Microsofts of the world that are the big tech Silicon Valley employers. And they're the new military industrial complex. So let's get into how this all connects. Let's start off with Tony Blinken, the nominee for Secretary of State, Avril Haines, the Director of National Intelligence, and there's talk that Michelle Flournoy, who I've mentioned several times on this channel, could be nominated as Secretary of Defense. Those three people, along with at least 7 others that are in Biden's current transition team, were or a part of a consultancy firm called WestExec Advisors. In fact, WestExec Advisors was founded by Tony Blinken, the named Secretary of State, and Michelle Flournoy, who is potentially going to be named as the Defense Secretary. Now, WestExec Advisors very specifically helped big tech companies secure defense contracts. That was their mission. They said, we're here to help bridge the gap between big tech Silicon Valley and the Defense Department. They were former Obama administration officials. They left during the Obama administration. Tony Blinken was under Secretary of State, and Michelle Flournoy, I believe, was under Secretary of Defense. And they left those departments at high, they were the second in command of those departments, and they left those positions. They started a consultancy firm. Now, it's not a lobbying firm. Biden promised he wouldn't put any lobbyists in his administration. Well, there's actually a little bit of a difference between a lobbyist and an advisor, but it's not much of a difference. The difference is a lobbyist goes and does the talking for you, and the advisors instead made the connections, made the meetings, and told these big tech companies who to talk to and what to say for themselves, rather than them doing the talking for them. That is the only difference. It's not much of one, really. When you're thinking of, most of lobbying is about connections. It's about who you know, the meetings you can get, having that just the rapport. And instead, this company says, well, we're not going to go do that for you, so we don't have to register as lobbyists. One thing that happens when they don't register as lobbyists is they don't have to disclose their client list. If they're lobbyists, they do. If they're not, they don't. So this shielded them from having to tell us who their clients are. This also shielded them from being actually categorized as lobbyists, which helps Biden now bring them into his administration without the flack he would get from the progressive wing. And that really is the only difference there. So WestExec Advisors specifically helped these big tech companies. They facilitated the meetings. They told them what to say, and they helped them secure billions upon billions of dollars worth of defense contracts, which should be very scary to all of us. This is stuff like facial recognition software. That was what Amazon helped develop. Google was helping with some artificial intelligence for, I believe, drone technology. And that was something that Google employees actually, if you remember, they rose up and they said, we don't want that. We don't want our creation to go and be used for war. That was something that they ended up protesting against, so Google had to drop that contract. Microsoft has also been doing a lot of various different contracts for the Defense Department. A lot of it has to do with our privacy and our security. And all of this kind of connects and leads together, because now you've got the pals that were helping these very big tech companies secure those billions upon billions of dollars. Now those very people are going to be running the show. Imagine how great this is for companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. Imagine that. I think we can all prepare for an increase in censorship, because the war on information is now the new war on terror. These big tech companies are going to be doing the bidding of the Democratic Party. They are going to be doing the bidding of the CIA. They've been able to secure billions of dollars in CIA contracts in order to store their cloud, to offer them the cloud storage. So they're working with the CIA, getting billions of dollars. They're working with top-level Democrats who are now named in the Biden administration in order to secure billions of dollars. And what does this mean? It means they're going to be continuing to censor dissent, because they don't want somebody else in office. They want their pals in power. The very pals that have been lining their pockets. That's who they want in power, and that's not going to change. And that should be very scary to all of us. We're all very reliant on these platforms for our information. Amazon, you've got Jeff Bezos. For one, Amazon is obviously a content provider, but also Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. So go figure why the Washington Post would be so Republicans and Trump and anyone who's against the mainstream Democratic establishment narrative. And again, this all kind of goes down to the big question of why. Many of us wanted to know why big tech was censoring everybody but the Democratic establishment. We knew this was happening, and a lot of us had guesses as to why, but now it's really, really clear. Defense contracts, billions and billions of dollars. We all now know to follow the money, and it's true in every single case. Microsoft. Oh, this is interesting. Bill Gates isn't, if you had conspiracy theories about Bill Gates before, let me just help add to them. Microsoft was the largest recipient of those defense contracts. And Microsoft, Bill Gates, was very much at the forefront of the scare tactics for the pandemic, getting everybody to shelter, to lock down the government, to lock down businesses, lock down the economies. We all know historically that when an economy is tanking, the president doesn't get reelected. It's always the economy. As Bill Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. They know this. So you've got guys like Bill Gates helping tank the economy because what's it to him? And turns out Microsoft is getting billions upon billions of dollars in defense contracts from the very people who are now sitting in the Biden administration. Does that sound like a coincidence to you? Does it sound like a coincidence to you that Google, here we are, is censoring dissent? They removed one of my videos the other day. I received a notification last week saying that they removed a video that I had done back in April because they determined that it spread medical misinformation. The video that I did was about the serology testing that was going on in various communities in Germany and in Italy and other places in the world. And all I was doing was giving you the results of the scientific studies that were conducted by scientists. But somehow that's medical misinformation. When I was giving good news that actually the death rate didn't seem to be as high at the time as what they were claiming it to be. They were spreading narratives of doom and gloom. And I was saying, look, these serology tests show that actually the death rate is much, much lower. They said that was medical misinformation, even though I was quoting actual studies that were done. I wasn't making them up. But that is where we're at, guys. And they are censoring doctors, scientists. They are censoring anybody who just doesn't fit the Democratic establishment narrative. And now it's making sense. The people that Biden put into his cabinet are the very people that help those big tech companies secure billions upon billions of dollars. And that should frighten all of us, because what that means going forward is, how are we supposed to get any information at all that is against the Democratic establishment at this point? Now that big tech is in control of pretty much our lives, and now that they've got their buddies sitting in power at the highest levels of government, do you think they're going to let opposition parties rise up? Or do you think they're going to let another Trump come along? Now, maybe not Trump. I know a lot of people, they don't like Trump. They're turned off by the guy. But just anybody, another populist, just somebody who rises up, who's for the people. Do you think they're going to let that happen? Do you think they're instead going to label it as misinformation, or they're going to label all of that as fake news or dangerous, and they're going to limit the exposure that people have to this person, even if the people want it? They instead silence them by manipulating their algorithms to ensure that it doesn't spread, that it doesn't go viral. Don't you think they're going to be doing that when that means that it threatens their very friends who are sitting in the highest levels of our government, that it would make those people lose their job? And they don't want them to lose their job. They want them to stay there so that they continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger defense contracts, so that the new war machine that is going to be created by this new Biden administration, that is actually, interestingly, made up of old school war hawks. You've got Michelle Flournoy, Tony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Avril Haines. These are folks that advocated for traditional, I don't know about Avril so much, but Jake Sullivan for sure, Michelle Flournoy for sure, and Tony Blinken advocated for very traditional war, intervention, strikes, regime change. They advocated for that. But look, these people are smart. They know to pivot. They know to pivot towards not your traditional warfare, but instead to technology warfare. We've all said that the new wars in the future would be technology-based. These folks know that, and they have pivoted. They have pivoted, and they understood where the future was, and they've now created a new military-industrial complex, and it is not the same old that we're used to. It's not the same old that Republicans were in bed with, the Raytheon and the Boeing and the Lockheed Martin. Now, those companies were mostly for Republicans, but they wised up and they started giving a lot of money to Democrats. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe because Democrats were starting to say, hey, there's a new warmonger in town, and that new warmonger is big tech. And so we're going to take all their money and help them secure these defense contracts and help them usher in the new form of warfare. Surveillance and privacy and censorship. That is where we're headed. And the big question then is, what can we even do about that? What can we do about the fact that this administration is now stacking their cabinet with people who have helped usher in this new form of warfare? And it's a warfare that's going to be deployed on the American people, not just on foreign enemies. We're already seeing it being deployed on us. We're already seeing it. What can we do? I want to kind of go through, now that I've given you the gist of it, I want to sort of go through with you a couple of articles, and I'm going to link them down below for you to read, but I just want to read a couple of excerpts for you. This was from The Intercept. This was 2 years ago. They had been reporting on this. They've been reporting on these former Obama officials helping Silicon Valley pitch the Pentagon for lucrative defense contracts. Now, they brought up these names. Little did they know that these names would be the names that are now going to be in the highest levels of government sitting in the cabinet. It says right here, WestExec story will be a familiar one for those who keep track of how private companies wrangle government contracts through the help of officials walking through the revolving door between public service and businesses that take in large amounts of government cash. The revolving door is a long-standing feature of the military-industrial complex, and it can lead to distorted policy decisions based on the financial interests of former government employees who use their expertise and contacts in the government to press policies that may or may not be in the national interest. You think? Oh, when you're making billions of dollars, it has nothing to do with national interest. In the May interview with The Intercept, Michelle Flournoy, explained the types of former officials who work with WestExec. People recently coming out of government, she said. Mostly deputies who have current knowledge, expertise, contacts, networks. She says, we help tech firms who are trying to figure out how to sell in the public sector space to navigate the DoD, the Department of Defense, the intel community, law enforcement. The company provides comprehensive government relations and other nuanced stakeholder mapping strategies to help them advance their objectives. Not our objectives as the American people. No, these are government now officials who are going to be sitting in Biden's cabinet. They didn't work to advance the interests of the American people and the objectives of the American people. Oh no, they worked really hard and made a lot of money, became really rich, advancing the objectives of big tech companies wanting to secure billions of dollars in defense contracts. That's what they did. This is your government, everybody. It says, according to the website, the client list is confidential and their work is largely done behind closed doors. Surprise, surprise, right? Goes on here. WestExec Advisors was co-founded by Antony Blinken, a former Deputy Secretary of State in the Obama administration, and the firm touts an impressive array of other retired senior officials, including the former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Daniel Shapiro, and Lisa Monaco, a former counterterrorism advisor to Barack Obama. Lisa Monaco is now on the Biden transition team. So a number of the people who were with WestExec are now with Biden's transition team. But like I mentioned, Tony Blinken, who was the founder of WestExec, alongside Michelle Flournoy, is now going to be Secretary of State. Avril Haines, who is, she's with our national security as well. She's on the team, and she is also a principal she was a principal with WestExec. So we've got a lot of conflicts of interest here. Here is another article. This one was done from Politico. This was the secretive consulting firm that's become Biden's cabinet in waiting. So this was a more recent article just last week here. It says the firm, so talking about WestExec, the firm, which now looks like a government in waiting for the next administration, was founded in 2017 by Tony Blinken, President-elect Joe Biden's choice for Secretary of State, and Michelle Flournoy, a top contender for Secretary of Defense, and one of its former principals, Avril Haines, is Biden's pick for Director of National Intelligence. But little is known about WestExec's client list because its staffers aren't lobbyists. They are not required to disclose who they work for. But by not directly advocating for federal dollars on behalf of their clients, they don't don't have to publicly divulge who's paying them. They avoid becoming registered lobbyists or foreign agents and are instead becoming strategic consultants. WestExec is loaded with other former top Democratic national security and foreign policy officials who raised money for the Biden campaign, have joined his transition team, or have served as unofficial advisors. At least 21 of the 38 WestExec employees listed on the firm's website donated to the Biden campaign. Flournoy alone raised more than $100,000. So it sounds like she's buying her way into the Defense Department. 5 WestExec staffers, all veterans of the Obama administration, are on leave from the firm to help staff Biden's review teams for the Pentagon, the Treasury Department, the Council of Economic Advisors, and other agencies. 2 other WestExec principals were among those who briefed Biden last week on national security. Meanwhile, Jen Psaki, a former White House communications director under President Barack Obama, who went on to work for WestExec, is now advising Biden's transition team, and 2 other former WestExec hands, Lisa Monaco and Julianne Smith, are considered potential Biden administration hires. Okay, guys, this isn't looking so good. Here's NBC News. Here is where it gets really sinister and sneaky. Here's NBC News. They actually reported on how these contracts were discovered because they're not easy to find. It says thousands of contracts highlight quiet ties between big tech and the U.S. military. On Wednesday, this was actually in July. This was published in July. Okay. On Wednesday, newly published research from the Technology Accountability Nonprofit Tech Inquiry revealed that the Department of Defense and federal law enforcement agencies, including Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Agency, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons, have secured thousands of deals with Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Dell, IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and even Facebook that have not been previously reported. The report offers a new window into the relationship between tech companies and the U.S. government, as well as an important detail about why such contracts are often difficult to find. It says the majority of the deals with consumer-facing tech companies involved subcontracts, a relationship in which the government contracts with one company, which then turns around and contracts with another company to complete obligations it doesn't have the resources to fill. So sub companies were created, and they were the ones who got the defense contracts, but then they turned around and gave those contracts to the big tech companies. It's a way to sort of mask who's actually receiving the contracts. Often the high-level contract description between tech companies and the military looks very vanilla and mundane, Paulson said in an interview, but only when you look at the details of the contract, which you can only get through the Freedom of Information Act. So you have to go in file and ask for these papers in order to even see any of this. He says, do you see the workings of how the customization from a tech company would actually be involved? Says out of all the companies that surfaced in Tech Inquiry's research, Microsoft stood out with more than 5,000 subcontracts with the Department of Defense and various federal law enforcement agencies since 2016. Amazon has agreed to more than 350 subcontracts with the military and federal law enforcement agencies like ICE and the FBI since 2016, and Google has more than 250, according to Tech Inquiry's analysis. So, look, guys, big tech is the new military-industrial complex, and my greatest fear right now, after seeing what's going on, is that the war on information is the new war on terror. And unfortunately, though the war on terror was large, it did also target Americans through things like the Patriot Act. The war on information is going to be more directly pointed at us. They're going to claim that they're using it to stop the influence of Russia and China and all this misinformation coming from these other countries. But we've already seen them weaponize it against us. We've already seen them censor Americans. And that is what they're going to continue to do to keep their friends in power, to keep those lucrative contracts coming. And I don't know what we can do about it, quite frankly. This is very scary. It is honestly the scariest thing I feel like I've reported on this channel completely. This is the scariest thing. Without information, we are completely defenseless, guys. That's it. Without information, we're screwed. And if this war on misinformation and fake news continues, and they just willy-nilly, you know how they are, they're just censoring anyone that they say, well, we're just labeling you as fake news. We don't really have any evidence as to why. We're not going to tell you. They don't have to tell you. They just say, yeah, we just think you are. And they shadow ban, and they develop the algorithms, and they, this is very, very scary. And I think we should all be very, very aware. And I'm going to continue to sound the alarm on this over and over and over again. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel because you know what? We got to help defeat the algorithm. And we all know I'm probably going to be suppressed for talking about this kind of stuff. So please subscribe to the channel. If you would like to support the show, there are ways to do that. Those links are down below. Thank you guys so much for watching.